Hey there everybody, my name is Sarah and I'm from the United States, and today I'm going to be helping you learn about something really exciting happening in the scientific world. So I am not a scientist, but when I started reading these articles, I found that they're really interesting actually. So today we're going to read about a bacteria that eats metal. I didn't know that anything could eat metal, except for maybe my dog. My dog likes to eat everything. And then when he eats it, I have to take it out of his mouth. It's a whole mess. But I did not know that bacteria can actually eat metal. So I think that's really interesting. So today we're going to read this article about the metal-eating bacteria. So first, we're going to read the entire article in English. And there are a lot of difficult words in there, I know. Some of them were even difficult for me, but we're going to review them together, so don't worry. And then after reviewing all of the vocabulary, we're going to go over the article one more time. All right, are you ready? Let's go. Nature, one of the world's leading science journals, reported on July 16th that researchers from the California Institute of Technology, otherwise known as Caltech, has accidentally discovered a new type of bacteria that eats metal. Jared Ledbetter, a professor of environmental microbiology at Caltech, did not return to his office for a few months after leaving a glass jar covered with manganese to soak. When he returned, he was shocked to see that the jar was covered with a dark substance that turned out to be oxidized manganese. The compound had been formed by bacteria. There is evidence that relatives of these creatures reside in groundwater, and a portion of Pasadena's drinking water is pumped from local aquifers, Ledbetter said. These are the first bacteria found that use manganese as their main source of fuel. In addition, the research also found that manganese can be used by the bacteria through chemosynthesis, which is a process that converts carbon dioxide into biomass. CNN reported that scientists think their findings can be useful in terms of understanding groundwater and water systems, as oxidized manganese frequently clogs them. Scientists believe the findings could be utilized for researching manganese nodules, the large metallic balls that reach the size of a grapefruit. The balls can be harvested from the ocean floor, but there isn't much information about them yet. Woodward Fisher, a professor of geobiology at Caltech, complimented the study. This discovery adds to the diverse ways in which manganese, an abstruse but common transition metal, has shaped the evolution of life on our planet, he said. So a lot of very new, potentially difficult information in this article. I know, I'm learning with you guys too, but don't worry, we're gonna learn all of the new words together. Okay, so the first word that we're going to review is the word microbiology. So you've probably seen biology before, which is basically 생물학 in Korean. So this prefix micro, it means something that's really tiny. So if you translate it into Korean, it's 미생물학. So mi, it can mean something that's really, really small, and micro has exactly the same meaning. So you can just remember that. So this word micro, you can use it in words like microchip, which is a super small chip that you can put in your computer or in your phone. You can also use it in the word microorganism. So a microorganism is something that's really, 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 really small, but it's alive. So microbiology is the branch of biology dealing with viruses and one-celled organisms. So viruses and one-celled organisms, you could call those microorganisms. Or at least the one-celled organisms, you can call those microorganisms. So for instance, bacteria and protozoas. So it's a lot of pretty interesting stuff. And I think microbiology is super useful right now because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So a lot of scientists who study microbiology are doing super important work to keep us healthy. So I support microbiology. So in the article, the microbiology professor was surprised to see that the bacteria had eaten the manganese. So you're going to see the word manganese a lot in this article. It's just important that you know it's a type of metal, and I believe in Korean it's called mangan. So you can just remember it like that. It's not a word that comes up a lot in everyday English conversation. So the second word that we're going to review, it's actually fitting that it's two, because it's the word oxidize. And to oxidize means to combine something with oxygen, or O2. So for instance, iron rusts when water oxidizes it. So if you make something out of iron, maybe a bike or a fence for a house, and then you leave it outside and it rains, it gets that orange dust on it, right? It's called rust. And rust is the chemical reaction that happens when water oxidizes iron. So Fe plus H2O equals rust. And that process is called oxidization. So in the article, the scientist, or the microbiologist, was really surprised when he saw the glass jar that had manganese on it, because there was a dark substance on the glass. And the dark substance was actually oxidized manganese. So the manganese combined with the oxygen and it formed the dark substance. And this is because the bacteria ate the manganese. So it's a pretty crazy concept. I thought it was really interesting. Okay, this is a little bit of a tricky word to pronounce. So what does it look like to you? So it kind of looks like, because there's an I and an E here, maybe it would be pronounced aquifer, but that's wrong. You should pronounce it aquifer, aquifer. And in this word, the beginning or the prefix, aqua, that's from Latin aqua, meaning water. So pretty much every time that you see this at the beginning of the word, it has something to do with water. So what is an aquifer? Well, in Korean, we can call it a 제수충, or in English, we can explain it as a layer of rock, sand, or gravel that contains water from which water and springs are supplied. So if you have a well, a big hole in the ground that goes deep down to get the water out, that water is coming from an aquifer. It doesn't just appear from magic. The water is deep down inside of the ground with the rocks and the gravel and the sand, and then we have to take it out using a well from the aquifer. So, for instance, drinking water is pumped from wells connected to aquifers. So, without the aquifer, there's no wells. Without the wells, there's no water. So, aquifers are super, super, super important things. Okay, this is a bit of a long word. My mom would call this a doozy. It's an informal word. It means something that's kind of difficult or big, but never fear, we are going to learn how to pronounce it together. So all together, this word is chemosynthesis. Chemosynthesis. So it's a little bit easier if we think of this as two separate words that have been brought together. So chemo. What does that mean? Does it look like anything perhaps familiar? So chemo here means chemical, or 화학, and then synthesis means bringing two things together, or 합성 in Korea. So in Korean, it's really easy to remember. It's just 화학, 합성. But in English, we call it chemosynthesis. So what is chemosynthesis? I did not actually know this before I made this presentation, but today we're going to learn it together. So chemosynthesis is the synthesis, so bringing two things together, of organic substances using energy provided by a chemical reaction. So bringing things together that are organic or 유기적, or they have carbon atoms inside, or they have carbon molecules inside, bringing those things together using the energy from a chemical reaction. So in the article, it said that chemosynthesis is a process by which carbon is converted into biomass. So biomass, here you can translate it as 생물량, but here in the article really it means food for the bacteria that eats the metal. Okay, here's another word. It's a little bit easier. I think it's pretty simple to tell what the word is just by looking at it. Groundwater. Groundwater. So it's water from the ground, water from underneath the dirt. So in Korean, we just call it 지하수. So it makes sense, right? So it's water from underground, therefore it's called groundwater. So in English, we could say that it's water held underground in soil and between rocks. So it's a little bit higher than water from the aquifer that we talked about just a little bit earlier. So what kind of water do we interact with all the time? So there's groundwater, water from the ground, water from aquifers, and also above ground water. So from sources like rivers or lakes or ponds or even the ocean. And all of these different types of water are affected by different kinds of pollution. So for instance, maybe if you go to the beach, you can see that there's like trash floating in the ocean. That's not so good. But groundwater, a lot of times it's affected by acid rain or even gasoline from the roads. So it's really, really important that we keep our groundwater and our above ground water from the lakes, ponds, streams, and rivers clean and safe to drink, because without water, we die. So it's kind of important. So in the article, it talked about how groundwater systems are frequently clogged by manganese. So over time, most water, unless it's pure H2O, which is pretty rare, a lot of times it'll have little tiny bits of minerals and metals inside. So when you have tons and tons of water flowing through one system, like a pipe in your house, sometimes there's a buildup or a residue of the minerals that get left over. So manganese is really good at clumping up into balls or nodules, which is a word that we're going to learn in just a moment. And these balls can stop the water from flowing inside of the water system. So it's a big problem. And the bacteria, because it eats the metal without causing any harm, could potentially be a really good way to solve this problem without sending people into the pipes. And it's a really dangerous and expensive and inconvenient process. So it's just better to maybe just let the bacteria do it themselves. Okay, so the next word that we're going to learn is metallic. Metallic. So we put the stress on the metallic, but if we cover this up right here, we can see this word looks like what? Metal, right? So metal, metallic. Metal, metallic. So we can guess by looking at it that the word metallic means that something is made up of or contains metal, or it's similar to metal. So sometimes if you eat something or drink something, it has kind of a metallic taste, right? So we could use the word in that context, or sometimes something just looks like metal. So for instance, there are special types of paint that are a little bit shiny that you can use to make something look like it's made of metal. So for instance, my friend painted the model airplane with sparkling metallic paint. So because the paint was silver and sparkly and it reflected the light, it looked like the plane that she made was actually made out of metal, even though in fact it was made out of wood. So if something is like metal or made out of metal, you can call it metallic, like the metallic paint. So the balls of manganese, because manganese is a metal, we could call the balls themselves metallic. So metallic balls of manganese can reach the size of a grapefruit. I did not realize it, but like a grapefruit, it's like this big, right? It's pretty big. So that would be a big problem if there was these metal balls inside of the pipes in the water system. Makes it really hard to get anything done. So it's important that we figure out a way to get rid of these metallic balls of manganese. We're getting close to the end, guys. I promise we can make it together. You and me, we're doing this. It's gonna be okay. Okay, so our next word is the word harvest. Harvest. So most of the time you think about this word in terms of agriculture. So for instance, the corn is harvested every autumn. So I grew up in a small town, lots of farms, so there was always a big harvest festival. We'd have pumpkins, we would have corn, we would have apples, so everyone would go out and harvest all of their fruits and vegetables, and then we would get to celebrate all together as a town. It was really nice. So harvesting means the gathering of ripe crops. So taking something that's ready to be plucked, that's ready to be taken, and just gathering it and bringing it somewhere else, that process is called harvesting. So usually the word harvest is used when we're talking about things that are alive, like a plant or a fruit, something that you grow in the ground. However, you can also use it to describe the process of taking something out, either to make the system better or to use it somewhere else. So for instance, we could say that the metallic balls of manganese can be harvested from the ocean floor. So all the way down to the bottom of the ocean, there are these big balls shaped like grapefruits made out of manganese, and we can take them out of the ocean to do more research about these bacteria that eat metal. Then if we want to do that, we must harvest them, take them up first from the bottom of the ocean. Okay, this is a little bit of a fun word, nodule, nodule. So in this context, basically it means like a little lump, a little ball, a little boop, something shaped like that, that's on the bottom of the ocean. So you can read it in Korean. 해저의 망간 단귀. 참 어려운 단어이네요. So I'm learning with you guys today. So in English we say it's a small rounded mass. So a lump, a swelling, or a node. For some reason, I think the word nodule sounds a little bit cuter. I don't know, a little bit more fancy. So as we said before, metallic nodules made out of manganese can form on the ocean floor. So all the little particles of manganese are floating around the ocean and they cling to each other and they make the grapefruit-sized balls that we mentioned earlier. Okay, this is another fun word, abstruse. Abstruse. So something that is abstruse is difficult to comprehend or understand. So maybe you can even think that the word abstruse itself is a bit abstruse because it's a pretty high-level word. Personally, I thought that this article was a little bit abstruse. It's a little bit above my education level. It was a lot of new information that I did not know about. So in the article, they talk about manganese as a common but abstruse transition metal. So manganese, it's everywhere. It's all around us. It's very common. It's very easy to find. However, we still don't understand the properties of manganese very well. And that's why we can use the word abstruse to describe it. Or you could also say in a different context that maybe a concept is abstruse. So for instance, you could say that Mr. Brown knows the art of making even the most abstruse theories easy to understand. So Mr. Brown, he takes these theories that are really abstruse, they're really complicated, they're really hard to understand, they're hard to explain, but he tells his students about them in a way that's very easy to comprehend, and it's not abstruse at all. So I hope that my explanation of the word abstruse was not abstruse. But if there's anything that you need me to explain a little bit better, you can let me know in the comment section down below. Okay, this is our very last word for today. You guys worked really hard. I'm so happy that we made it all the way to the end, so let's just push through. 2 more minutes, guys, we can do this. Our last word is evolution. Evolution. So in Korean we could say 진화. So I'm sure you've probably heard about evolution in school, but let's just review. So evolution is the theory that describes how all life forms developed from simpler life forms over millions of years. So have you ever heard of Charles Darwin? I'm sure if I've heard of Charles Darwin, you definitely know who Charles Darwin is. He is the scientist that studied the properties of birds on the Galapagos Island. He saw how different species of birds, they evolved through the process of evolution to have different beak shapes based on the food that they eat. So even humans, we evolved from simpler life forms to be able to do things like this, like learn languages and make videos, stuff like that. So it's all very exciting. So it's not just animals that can evolve, it can also be other things. So for instance, because of evolution, desert plants do not need much water to survive in dry climates. So if you're a plant and you're in the desert and you're a very, very thirsty plant, if you need a lot of water, you're gonna die pretty easily and probably pretty early, right? And because plants that would need a lot of water, they die faster, they don't make as many seeds. Usually plants that grow in the desert have evolved to be able to survive with very, very little bits of water because they don't really need a lot. And I didn't realize this before I read this article, but manganese, the metal, has shaped the evolution of life on our planet. So the fact that there's a bacteria that eats manganese, that eats literally metal to survive, it's pretty amazing, right? It shows that even stuff like metal can influence how evolution has taken place on planet Earth. It's really, really remarkable. Okay, I think that we all evolved into better English speakers throughout this video, but just to check our progress, we're going to read through the article one more time. All right, are you ready? All right, let's read through it. Okay. Nature, one of the world's leading science journals, reported on July 16th that researchers from the California Institute of Technology have accidentally discovered a type of bacteria that eats metal. So crazy. Jared Ledbetter, a professor of environmental biology at Caltech, did not return to his office for a few months after leaving a glass jar covered with manganese to soak. When he returned, he was shocked to find that the jar was covered with a dark substance that turned out to be oxidized manganese. The compound had been formed by the bacteria. There's evidence that relatives of these creatures reside in groundwater, and a portion of Pasadena's drinking water is pumped from the local aquifers, Ledbetter said. These are the first bacteria found to use manganese as their source of fuel. In addition, the research also found that manganese can be used by the bacteria through chemosynthesis, which is a process that converts carbon dioxide into biomass. CNN reported that scientists think their findings can be useful in terms of understanding groundwater and water systems, as oxidized manganese frequently clogs them. Scientists believe that the findings could be utilized for researching manganese nodules, the large metallic balls that reach the size of a grapefruit. The balls can be harvested from the ocean floor, but there isn't much information about them yet. Woodward Fisher, a professor of geobiology at Caltech, complimented the study. This discovery adds to the diverse ways in which manganese, an abstruse but common transition metal, has shaped the evolution of life on our planet, he said. Everyone, you did so well today. This was a super difficult article. I learned a lot of new information that I definitely did not know. I hope that you guys learned something as well. So if you like this video, make sure to give us a thumbs up and send us a comment in the comment section below. So thank you guys very, very much for your hard work today, and we will be seeing you very, very soon. Okay, bye!